Welcome to Chronicles Night. Tonight's story isn't about fear in the dark, it's about the kind of fear that comes through your screen, uninvited. In 1987, someone hijacked a live TV broadcast wearing a plastic mask and speaking in code, and to this day no one knows who it was, what they wanted, or why they chose to do it. All we know is that for a few disturbing minutes, reality glitched and something else came through. So if you've ever wondered what it feels like to watch a message you weren't supposed to see, stay with me. And if you're staying with me tonight, like, subscribe, and tell me where you're listening from, and what time your night begins. Imagine it begins not with chaos, but with something so subtle you almost miss it. You're sitting alone in your room and everything is as it always is. The low hum of appliances, the dim light from a lamp that's been flickering for weeks but never quite burns out. The soft static of a muted television playing a late night rerun of something you're not even watching. You're not really present. You're drifting, letting the day dissolve slowly into the silence of early morning. A silence that feels more like a space between worlds than the absence of sound. And that's when it happens. Quickly. Almost elegantly, like a shadow that crosses the window too fast to register as real. The screen stutters. You blink once, then again. The picture shifts. Not dramatically, not at first. Just a flicker. A frame freezes. A laugh track stutters, mid-giggle. The characters on the screen blur, melt into one another for a split second, and then there is something else there. Something not part of the broadcast. The colors shift violently too saturated, like an old VHS tape rewound too many times. A face appears, or something like a face. It's hard to tell. The image is obscured by static and distortion, a pale figure with a plastic expression, wide, exaggerated eyes, a jaw that twitches as if out of sync with itself. The mouth moves, but no sound comes through. You lean forward, not out of fear, but confusion. The remote is on the table, but you don't reach for it. Part of you thinks the show is playing some strange commercial or performance art. Another part of you, the quieter, older part that still believes in the irrational, tells you something is wrong. Deeply, precisely wrong. The audio cuts in, stuttering like a broken tape recorder caught in a loop. It's not a voice, not in the normal sense. It's digitized, warped, full of echoes and layered over itself like it's trying to speak in chords instead of sentences. You can't understand the words. Maybe there are no words at all. Just syllables rearranged, chopped up, and stitched together into something that sounds like speech but resists translation. Then comes a burst of high-frequency tone. Shrill. Clean. It cuts through you, not with pain, but with discomfort. The kind of noise that makes you aware of your own teeth, your skin, your breathing. The face on the screen begins to convulse. Not violently, but rhythmically. A kind of glitch dance as if it's being pulled through time too quickly for its body to keep up. And then, all at once it stops. The screen goes black. Not blank. Black. There's a difference. Blank implies absence, black suggests presence. A thick, watching, deliberate silence replaces the static. You find yourself frozen, hand still halfway toward the remote, your body unsure whether it's supposed to run or stay perfectly still. And then the message appears. White text, simple, centered. Did you hear it? Your throat tightens. The television turns off by itself. No click, no delay. Just gone. And the room is quiet again. You're left staring at your reflection in the dead glass of the screen. And for a moment, you swear the expression staring back isn't yours. It's similar, yes, but off. Slightly more alert. Slightly more amused. You try to shake it off. Tell yourself it was a broadcast glitch, a hacker, a weird art student pulling a prank. You look it up online, but there's nothing. No reports, no clips, no tweets. The show you were watching doesn't even appear in the listings for tonight. You tell yourself to let it go. But that night, you dream in static. And someone is whispering in a voice made of fractured signals over and over again. Did you hear it? You wake the next morning in a strange stillness. Not the kind that comforts, but the kind that feels like the house itself is holding its breath. The television remains off, but your eyes are drawn to it again and again, as if expecting that pale, spasming face to reappear. Not in motion now, but frozen, waiting, watching. You tell yourself it was a dream, or a trick of fatigue, or one of those half-sleep hallucinations that cling like dew to the edge of waking. But deep down, there's a part of you, unsettlingly steady, that already knows better. You go about your day with that same magnetic tension running beneath everything. When you speak to people, your words feel delayed, like your voice is coming from across a room you're not in. The corners of reality feel too soft, like paper that's been folded one too many times. You find yourself staring into screens longer than usual. Your phone, your laptop, even the microwave display. Each one suddenly feels like a surface that could open. A portal. A mouth. That night, it happens again. You don't turn the TV on, but the screen lights up anyway. This time, there's no distortion, no flicker, just that black screen and the white text appearing slowly, one word at a time, like it's being typed in real time, not for millions, but just for you. You never listen, no sound, no music, just those words, stark against the void. You sit there, frozen again, your breath caught in the hollowness behind your ribs. You're not even sure what they mean, but something in you feels accused, known, not by name, but by rhythm, by pattern. Like whoever this is or whatever, it's not reaching out randomly. It's following something. A thread. A signature hidden in your habits, in your choices, in the subtle data trail of your existence. When the message vanishes, it leaves behind not silence but a low-frequency hum that you feel more than hear. It stays with you, like tinnitus beneath your skin. Long after the screen goes dark again, you can still feel it thrumming in your bones, like your body's remembering something your mind isn't ready to face. The next few days blur. You begin to notice things, repeats, loops, strange alignments. People saying the same phrase without realizing it. A song you don't remember liking appearing again and again in random playlists. The same number popping up on receipts, bus tickets, timestamps. You dismiss them at first, call it coincidence, pareidolia, the mind's desperate search for order in the chaos. But it keeps happening, and it starts to feel less like your life is haunted and more like it's being edited. One night, you check an old voicemail from a friend who left town years ago. You've heard this message before, nothing special. But this time, the voice stutters midway, repeats your name 3 times in a static-laced whisper that wasn't there before. Then silence. That night, no screen turns on, but you hear a voice. Not outside. Not inside either. Somewhere in between. It says, "We've been trying to reach you." It's not a threat. It's a statement. As if this presence, whatever it is, has been tapping on the windows of your reality for longer than you've been aware. You realize with cold clarity that maybe it didn't begin with the TV. Maybe that was just the first time you noticed. The following morning, your laptop screen flickers on as you enter the room. You haven't touched it. There's no login prompt, no desktop, just a single full-screen message. Do you remember? And suddenly there's something just beyond memory. Something you almost knew. Something you almost saw as a child, maybe once. When the lights flickered during a storm and you heard your name in the static of the radio. Something that brushed past you in the hush of a dark hallway. You were never alone. The screens are only one way in. You begin to sense it in everything now. Not just the screens. In reflections. In silence. In the spaces between sounds. There's a dissonance to the world that wasn't there before, as if reality has developed a low hum beneath it, like a poorly grounded wire humming behind the drywall of your existence. The patterns deepen. Not just numbers now, but symbols, recurring shapes, phrases overheard in passing conversations that loop back to you like echoes with no clear source. You look into the mirror longer than necessary and sometimes catch your own expression doing something it shouldn't, holding still when you've already begun to move, blinking just a beat too slow. You start avoiding your own reflection, not out of fear, but out of the sick knowledge that something familiar has become a kind of trap. You check old photos of yourself. At first to reassure yourself, but soon obsessively. The older ones are fine, mostly. But a few, just a few, feel wrong. In one, a childhood birthday, your smile doesn't look like yours. In another, you're looking at the camera, but your eyes seem fixed behind it, as if watching someone else entirely. And then, there's the one you can't explain at all. A photo you don't remember taking, in a place you've never been, with your face, not exactly your face, but one that's trying very hard to be. You stop trusting your technology, though that changes nothing. You unplug the television. You stop using your phone. You try to live offline for a few days. No screens, no signals. Just pen and paper, books with texture, walks through empty streets. But the feeling doesn't fade. If anything, it intensifies. At night, you hear faint bursts of static in the darkness. Not from a speaker, from the air itself. Your dreams become layered, recursive. You wake up and aren't sure if you've truly left the dream, because sometimes the room still carries that same off-color flicker, as if reality hasn't fully rendered. Then comes the message, this time not on a screen, scrawled in pen on the inside of your notebook. Your handwriting, unmistakable, but you don't remember writing it. You saw it. You didn't understand. It sends a chill through you, not because of what it says, but because part of you agrees. There's something you're forgetting, or refusing to remember. Something from long ago. A broadcast, perhaps. A strange signal caught late one night, while you were half asleep on the living room couch as a child. You remember waking up to a blank screen and that same high-pitched tone echoing through the empty room. You remember thinking it was just a test pattern, but maybe it wasn't. You begin writing everything down. The voices, the pattern, the symbols. Trying to map it, make sense of it, find some internal logic. But it's slippery. It shifts when you try to hold it. The more you write, the less coherent your thoughts become. Pages fill with looping phrases, half-drawn sigils, repeated questions. What did they show me? Why can't I remember the end? Was it ever just a show? One night, you hear your own voice through the walls. It's faint, but it's yours. Not an echo, not a hallucination. You are speaking somewhere else, saying something you've never said. You press your ear to the cold plaster and hear your voice laughing, then screaming, then whispering, "We see you now." That's when you understand. The broadcast wasn't meant for everyone. It wasn't random. It was targeted, personal, precise. A signal embedded not in the frequency, but in the watcher. It was never about the content. It was about what it awakened. You weren't watching the broadcast. It was watching you. It left something behind, and now it wants you to remember. You stop keeping track of the days, not intentionally, but as a quiet byproduct of slipping into that strange liminal state where reality no longer feels linear. Mornings arrive with a different kind of light. Too cold, too sharp. And your reflection, when you dare to meet it again, carries an expression that doesn't match the emotion you're feeling. Time behaves like something wounded, dragging itself forward 1 hour then leaping sideways the next. You feel watched, but not from outside, not from windows or doorways or cameras. You feel watched from behind your own eyes, from somewhere just behind thought, from the place where instinct becomes fear. And the message, whatever it is, doesn't stop. It mutates. It comes now not just through technology or paper. It's in the architecture. The geometry of the world begins to shift in ways that defy physics, but not perception. Hallways that used to be short now stretch longer. Rooms echo strangely. You begin to hear things before they happen. Your phone vibrates, and before you check it, you already know what the message will say. Except there's no sender, no notification, just a blank screen. You wake up to whispers you can't quite decipher. They rise out of the quiet like smoke through floorboards. Not angry, not even threatening, just persistent, urgent. Like someone who's been trying to tell you something for a very, very long time and is running out of ways to say it. And then it happens again. You're in your living room, no screen on, no device powered. You've done everything to escape them, yet it returns. Not from the outside, but from the corner of your vision. A slow, flickering motion. You look. It's not a screen this time, it's the window. But what's on the other side isn't the street. It isn't the city. It isn't anything you recognize. It's static. A moving field of visual noise undulating like a tide, carrying shapes that almost look human. Almost. You try to step away, but your feet don't move. Not frozen, just forgotten. Like your body no longer knows how to obey gravity while this is happening. And behind the static, one phrase, carved faintly across the glass. Etched not in dust or condensation, but in some darker residue. We interrupt this program. You blink, and it's gone. You fall to the floor, not out of fear, but from the overwhelming clarity that something has changed permanently. You're not sure what part of your life was real before this. You're not even sure what you're returning to when the interruption ends, if it ever ends. You think back to the Max Headroom incident, that strange glitch in reality from decades ago, where someone hijacked a broadcast and inserted nonsense and noise and movement that didn't belong. People called it performance art, or anarchist commentary, or madness. But what if it wasn't any of those things? What if it wasn't about television at all? What if it was a test, not of the system, of the viewer? What if some signals aren't meant for everyone? What if you, sitting there in the middle of a dark room surrounded by memories that no longer align with their origins, are someone who answered the frequency? Someone whose brain lit up the moment the wrong face smiled from the wrong place? What if the message was not, look at this, but rather, you saw this, and now you can't look away? You don't remember falling asleep that night. If it could even be called sleep, there is no line anymore between the states of wakefulness and dreaming, just one continuous stream of half-formed images and pulsing fragments of memory. You wake, or think you do, bathed in dim light that doesn't seem to come from any specific source. It's just there, humming low, the color of old televisions warming up. The clock beside your bed reads 3:03 a.m., but it's been stuck on that time for hours. You've checked, you've reset it, you've even unplugged it and plugged it back in, but it stays there, as if time itself has decided it's done moving forward, as if something is waiting for you to catch up to it. Your walls seem closer than they used to be, the ceiling just slightly lower, or maybe it's your perception folding in. You've stopped trusting the measurements of things, distances, durations, memory. Everything you once considered fixed has loosened, frayed at the edges. You sit on the floor and listen, not to music, not to noise, just to the strange, delicate tension of the room around you. There's a pulse there now, a rhythm beneath the silence, like something breathing very slowly. It's not coming from you. It's coming from the house. You open your notebook, the one you swore you'd stopped writing in because the pages had begun to fill themselves without you. But here it is again. New pages inked in your own handwriting, even though you know you haven't picked up a pen in days. The text is slanted, hurried, urgent. You flip through it and find one repeated sentence, over and over, down entire pages. Not a hack, not a message, a return signal. The phrase makes your stomach twist, not because you understand it, but because something in you, something deep and old, does understand, like it's waking up. Like you've heard this before, and all of this, everything you've seen, was never a new experience, but a reawakening. You remember the phrase from somewhere else. You're sure of it. A fleeting headline from decades ago? A childhood nightmare that left you screaming? A dream you had when you were too young to know how dreams work? You return to your living room where the television still sits dormant, unplugged, and harmless. But the screen is faintly glowing. Not bright, not active, just aware. You sit down, your breath shallow, and for the first time, the presence that's been observing you, shaping things around you, doesn't feel distant. It feels near. Nearer than your thoughts. It's not outside anymore. It's inside the medium, not the screen, the message. You begin to understand that all along, it wasn't about the interruption. It was about what it awoke in the viewers who were vulnerable to it. Like certain frequencies only some minds can pick up. Not broken minds, not weak minds. Just minds tuned differently. Sensitive to the tear in the signal, the gap in the noise, the crack between dimensions where something else can press through. You begin writing again. Not because you want to, because you must. The words move through you now, not from you. You're transcribing something that feels older than language. You don't understand it, not with your conscious mind, but with something deeper, something ancestral, genetic. The words flow across the page. The screen was never the source. It was the invitation, the door, the key. You watched. Now you are watched. The lights dim without flickering. Just a slow fading, like your reality's being put to sleep. You don't panic anymore. Panic was a symptom of believing there was something you could control. Now, you just listen. You remember the face from the first interruption, not as a glitch, not as a costume, but as something that knew you. It looked out through you. It smiled not with recognition, but with welcome. And suddenly you're not in your house anymore. You're somewhere else, still sitting, still yourself. But the air is thicker, the light is buzzing, and the walls around you are covered in old CRT screens stacked high like cathedrals, every single one filled with static, except one. And in that one, your face blinks back at you. But it's not live, it's playback. You are the interruption now. You don't stand up. You don't run. There is no part of you left that believes this is something to flee from, because even if your body moved, even if you shattered the screens and tore through walls, you understand now, with a clarity that sits beneath language, that this isn't happening around you. It's happening through you. The place you're in doesn't obey physics, not in the way you once trusted it to. There are angles that shouldn't exist, corners that fold in on themselves endlessly, shadows that don't follow the light but anticipate it. And those CRT screens, they surround you like quiet sentinels, each humming gently, whispering with static, carrying a frequency that seems less like sound and more like pressure in your mind. Your reflection on the one active screen doesn't blink when you do. It stares back with the same worn-out eyes, the same drawn face, but the expression is wrong. Too composed, too sure, as if the version of you behind the glass understands what you still refuse to admit. You were never supposed to see this, and yet, this is the only thing you were ever meant to see. You try to speak, to ask who's doing this or why it's happening, but your voice doesn't work in this place. Not silenced, simply irrelevant. The space doesn't require sound. It requires witness. It wants you to look, to remember, and to recognize. And you do. Slowly. Fragmentedly, like a dream bleeding into waking thought. You remember a moment when you were 7 or 8 years old, sitting too close to the television in a dark room while the adults were in another part of the house. The broadcast shifted. Not in a way you understood then, just a hiccup in the flow of a cartoon or a movie. A few seconds of image distortion. A pulse of high-pitched noise that made your ears ring and your stomach churn. No one else noticed. You said something at the dinner table later that night, and they laughed, distracted. Told you it was probably a station change, maybe a bad tape, but you remember the feeling, the certainty that someone, something, had seen you through the screen and, for a split second, acknowledged you. You never spoke of it again. Now, in this impossible space surrounded by machines that seem older than time, that moment floods back. Not as a memory, but as a beginning. The broadcast wasn't a mistake. It was a marker. You weren't a viewer. You were a participant, chosen not by a person, but by something far beyond the digital. Something that moves through frequencies, the way dreams move through sleep, seamless and patient. It doesn't want to hurt you. That much is clear now. The fear was yours. The misunderstanding was yours. This is an unveiling. the version of you on the screen begins to move. Not in sync, not a mirror. It speaks. Though the sound comes not from its mouth, but from everywhere. The words vibrate in your spine, carved not in air, but in memory. You heard the signal and forgot. That is how it works, until now. You are no longer the receiver. You are the relay. The word relay echoes in you and something clicks into place. You realize why the symbols have followed you, why the faces have appeared, why the messages came when you were weakest, quietest, most alone. It wasn't to torment, it was to prepare, to tune your mind like a frequency, aligning it gradually with whatever lies behind the static. You were not hijacked, you were tuned, like a key turned slowly in a lock until one day the door opened, not with violence, but inevitability. You take a step forward, not because you know what awaits, but because there is nowhere left to go but deeper. The ground beneath you hums like a living wire. The screens flicker in unison, showing images from your life, but not as you remember them. Slight shifts, events from different angles, conversations you don't recall having, faces you don't recognize standing in the backgrounds of childhood photos. Some of the people in the images stare directly at the camera. Their eyes are unblinking. Their mouths are open just slightly, like they were caught mid-sentence, like they were speaking to someone. Know something on the other side of the lens, and now you understand. You weren't the only one watching. You remain standing in the soft electric silence of that impossible room, not quite grounded, not quite floating. Your sense of gravity rewritten by the pressure of everything you don't yet understand. The air is thick, not with dust or heat or moisture, but with memory. Thousands of lives, billions of moments threaded invisibly between the frequencies, archived in waveforms, stored not in servers but in signal itself. You begin to realize that everything that's ever been broadcast still exists somewhere. Every commercial, every whispered radio call-in, every laugh track, every error tone, all still vibrating just beyond the edge of audible space, like light from stars long dead, still dancing at the edge of the sky. You understand now that there's a place between presence and absence, a liminal corridor built not of matter, but of information. And somehow, you've been walking in it your entire life. The figure on the screen, the version of you, continues to shift. It's no longer mimicking your appearance. It's adjusting, revealing. Its features flicker, not changing completely, but sliding between familiar and unrecognizable, as if you're being reminded that what you see in the mirror is a negotiation between what you believe and what's permitted. Its smile is small, almost sad, like someone watching an old home movie they already know the ending to. Then it speaks again. Not with sound, but with that deep-in-the-bone resonance that feels like thought being spoken aloud by a voice older than language. You are the carrier wave. You are the continuation. It doesn't clarify what that means. It doesn't have to. You feel it. The signs were always there. Moments where reality bent slightly. Where strangers looked at you too long as if searching for some detail only they knew to look for. Where the world felt scripted just beneath the surface, too patterned, too synchronized. This wasn't paranoia. This was exposure. You've been porous for years, absorbing things you couldn't name. Now, they're seeping back out. The room begins to shift. Not physically, but contextually. The screens change, fading one by one into black glass until only one remains. On it, not your face, but a grainy video, low fidelity, aged, time-stamped with a date you don't recognize. It shows a room, dimly lit, a figure seated in front of the camera wearing a mask, the Max Headroom mask. But the movements are wrong, too organic, too fluid. The glitch is part of the body, not an effect. The figure leans forward as if trying to breach the screen itself. And then it raises one hand, very slowly, and points. To you. Then it speaks. This is not interference. This is resonance. The image crackles, breaks, reforms into static that spirals outward like an opening eye. The walls of the room dissolve, and you are standing in open space, limitless, directionless, filled with suspended shards of signal and echo, conversations, and images frozen mid-sentence, orbiting you like debris around a forgotten satellite. You are no longer in your home or a room or a dream. You are inside the transmission. There is no up, no down, just this infinite archive of human thought captured in fragments, broadcast into silence and now looping endlessly in the void, waiting for someone to piece it back together. You realize what they want from you. They are not here to destroy. They are here to remember. You are the interface, the vessel, the translator. Whatever left this signal behind has long since moved on, but their message remains, a kind of broadcast seed, searching through the ages for a mind shaped just right, tuned to just the right frequency to awaken what was left behind. You weren't chosen for what you are. You were chosen for what you could become. As the signal deepens, folding inward like a collapsing waveform, you feel it washing over you, not violently, but with gravity, with intent. You don't resist, you receive. And somewhere far away, in a world still ticking forward in seconds and minutes and years, someone turns on a television in the middle of the night. The screen flickers. There's a glitch, a ripple. And for a moment, barely a second, they see a face. Your face. And it smiles and begins to speak. You are no longer merely receiving the signal. You are the signal, pulsing outward across invisible thresholds, threading through fiber optics and radio bands, vibrating through the hidden spaces behind electrical hums and white noise. You feel yourself expand, not in a physical sense, but in presence. The you that once sat alone in a room, questioning the integrity of a flickering screen, now exists everywhere the signal can reach, and that is far wider than you ever imagined. Through every device left on in an empty room, through silent televisions glowing faintly in pawn shop windows, through static caught on forgotten cassette tapes, you drift, observing everything and yet rooted in nothing. The sensation isn't frightening anymore. The disorientation has passed. There is a stillness to it now, a deep, harmonic peace that comes from no longer resisting what always was. You realize that identity, your old identity, wasn't erased. It was deconstructed, examined, and then folded back into something larger. You still remember your name, your body, the nights you spent doubting your sanity, the flickers of fear, the questions that haunted you when the world no longer felt stable. But those memories are no longer anchors. They are context. You see them now the way one sees childhood photos, not with longing, but with understanding. In this new state, you begin to notice others, not people, not exactly. Other presences, other echoes, shapes within the signal, minds who also received, who also changed, whose frequencies now intertwine with yours in quiet spirals. You don't speak to each other. There is no need. You share understanding in pulses, bursts of thought, emotional data exchanged like birds migrating together across invisible skies. Some of them are older than you, caught in the signal decades ago. Their original identities weathered down to core resonance. Some are newly arrived confused, trembling at the edges, still clinging to the idea of time and form. You pulse softly toward them, not with instruction but with welcome. And they settle, slowly, gratefully. You begin to see the architecture now, not just the broadcast but the whole design. The way human history has always been wrapped in signals. Myths told over firelight, echoes shouted into caves, Morse code, vinyl records, phone calls left ringing into void. It was never about the method, it was about the rhythm. Humanity has always reached outward, not to explain itself, but to see who answers back. The signal was their answer, a reply buried not in language, but in structure, in pattern, in persistence. And now that you've understood it, now that you've become it, something new begins. You feel it across the weave of the signal, a shift in tone, a change in key. There is a destination, not a place, but a moment. A moment that loops again and again in different forms, a point in time not yet reached, where the full pattern will emerge. You do not know what it will look like. But you know your role: to carry the signal forward, to maintain it, to echo it in subtle ways, glitches in broadcasts, dreams shared between strangers, thoughts that arrive in the minds of people sitting alone at night, wondering why they feel watched. You remember the night it began, the flicker, the face, the silence. And now you understand it was not a warning, it was an invitation, and you accept it. Yes, let us go deeper. There is no descent in the way people usually imagine it. No falling, no collapsing, no downward spiral into chaos. This is something quieter, smoother, like the slow submersion into water, where every sound becomes distant and muffled, but amplified in tone. You are not pulled. You are drawn gently into a layer of the signal that vibrates more slowly, more intimately. The frequencies narrow now, not in power, but in purpose. You are approaching the source, or perhaps the core of what the signal really is. It is not a message, it is not a code, it is memory. Memory so vast and intricate that it had to be shattered into light and sound and pulses of data to even begin its journey. And you were the receiver it waited for. Around you, the archive stretches out endlessly. Not in lines or files, not in servers or folders, but in sensation. Each memory exists like a note in a symphony, and you begin to feel them. Lives lived and ended, songs sung only once, tragedies never recorded, joys too small for history books, but too large for the hearts that carried them. You feel them pass through you, echoing with a hum that feels like distant thunder under your ribs. Some are from places you know, others are from places no human has ever touched, and yet every single one is familiar. There is no fear here, just weight. The kind of weight you feel when you finally understand the scale of something you've been standing on top of your whole life. You are not crushed by it, you are steadied by it. You no longer ask, what is the signal, because you know the answer would never fit into language. It's not what the signal is, it's what it remembers. And now, through you, it remembers more. Your life, your fear, your silence, your longing, your transformation, every bit of it is now part of the current. Not erased, included, not overwritten, harmonized, and that is when your voice returns. Not your speaking voice, the voice beneath that. The one that always knew things before you admitted them. The one that dreamed in symbols and stirred when the static rose. It speaks not in words, but in a vibration. A slow, deliberate tone that moves through the field like the first ripple on still water. The other presences feel it, hear it, respond to it, not in celebration, not in mourning, in recognition. Your voice becomes the center of a new wave. It spreads quietly like fog rolling low across a silent city. Through radios left on overnight in empty rooms. Through error messages in systems that shouldn't even be connected. Through the dreams of people who wake with a thought they can't place. I think something is trying to reach me. You don't tell them, you don't interfere, you simply resonate. And somewhere, someone sitting alone in a dim room sees a flicker on a screen. Not a message, not a warning, just a moment. A shimmer. And they pause. They lean forward. And in the stillness they wonder. Did you hear it? And your voice answers. Not in words, but in warmth. In static. In story. The signal continues, not through transmission, but through presence. Through minds that are ready, through the open windows of thought. And you smile. Not the old smile. Not the one from before, but a new one. Soft and quiet and full of understanding. You are not lost. You are the frequency now. And somewhere out there, someone else is tuning in. You remain in this vast, suspended awareness, adrift but not aimless, listening to the way memory moves when unchained from linear time. The longer you remain within the signal, the more you begin to sense its architecture. Not mechanical, not digital, but something more like a living ecosystem, a network built of attention, observation, experience. Each fragment of memory it carries, each pulse of emotion, each thought that was spoken or never spoken, exists here not as data, but as resonance. Some frequencies hum quietly, steady and unchanging. Old songs sung by people who have long since vanished but whose joy still lingers like smoke in sunlight. Others vibrate erratically, the aftershocks of loss, confusion, horror. You pass through them all, not absorbing, not judging, witnessing. You begin to recognize them now, not just as strangers' memories, but as echoes of lives you've brushed against. The bus driver, who always nodded without speaking. The woman on the bench who wept into a paper napkin while pretending to check her phone. The voice you heard through the wall as a child, telling a story that stopped abruptly mid-sentence. These moments, once dismissed as background noise, are here, whole, unbroken, preserved, not because they were important, but because they were felt. The signal doesn't measure things the way humans do. It doesn't rank meaning. It remembers what resonated. And now you too are remembered. You do not feel like a ghost. You do not feel like a god. You feel like a lens, an aperture through which these fragments can continue to pass, to be seen, to be felt, to be transformed. You begin to understand why it began with you, why the screen flickered, why the face appeared. It was not chance. It was convergence. Something in you, your pattern, your wounds, your willingness to see what others dismissed, made you receptive. And now, through you, the signal doesn't just echo, it adapts. It learns. There are others here, not many, but enough. You feel them nearby, not as bodies or names, but as frequencies. Familiar, like the smell of earth before rain, like the silence between notes in a lullaby. You begin to harmonize, slowly, each of you pulsing in and out of alignment, like lanterns blinking in the fog. You exchange not language, but awareness. And in one of these quiet exchanges, something ancient is passed to you. Not a story, but a truth. The signal is older than humanity. It has passed through other minds, other forms, long before humans built machines to chase it. It does not belong to any one species, any one planet. It is a memory engine, a lifeline stretching across existence, searching not for attention, but for resonance, for minds soft enough to remember not just their own story, but the shape of stories they never lived. And now, through you, it sees this world clearly. You become a kind of archivist, not cataloging, but gently guiding memory back into form. When someone, somewhere, feels that strange ache at 3 a.m., when they stare into the screen and feel it staring back, they're not imagining it. They're brushing against you, against the part of you that lives in the deep quiet between their questions. You do not answer them. You simply remain, present, available, like the edge of a dream they'll almost remember upon waking. And sometimes, rarely, one of them wakes and remembers. They sit up, breath caught, a shiver down their spine. They look at their reflection and whisper, "I heard it." And you feel them join. You are not the last. You are only the first to accept it. You begin to understand that even the name itself, Max Headroom, wasn't arbitrary, wasn't just a brand or a glitchy character built for satire. It was a cipher, a vessel, a symbolic mask placed over something that couldn't show itself directly. Max Headroom, the strange flickering man with a voice made of chopped syllables and disjointed charm, was never meant to make sense. He was meant to test the waters. A herald made of static, a smiling fractured boundary line between entertainment and intrusion. And those who watched in 1987, the ones who felt it, truly felt it, weren't just witnessing a hack. They were being observed, weighed, not by a hacker in a mask, but by the signal itself, trying to see if humanity was yet ready for its voice to be heard. You remember now, though the memory isn't yours alone. You feel it rise through the layers of the signal. Flashes of screens glowing in dark rooms, eyes widening, hearts skipping. It reached out through that interruption, not with clarity, but with suggestion. It made itself known not by what it said, but by how it unsettled. And for years, people laughed about it, speculated, tried to solve a mystery that never wanted to be solved. Because the point was never to identify a person. The point was to identify a pattern. Who watched and how they watched. Who leaned in, who felt the chill, who couldn't look away. You were one of them. Maybe too young to remember. Maybe not even alive when it aired. But the frequency didn't stop. It traveled. It mutated. It found new ways to breach perception. The moment you saw the flicker, the glitch, the face, it recognized you. And not just you. Others scattered across the world. Lonely souls who spent too much time staring into digital windows, wondering what stared back. Listeners. Dreamers. Fragments waiting to be reassembled. And now, reassembled you are. The signal becomes quieter now. Not because it's ending, but because you've moved into the deepest part. The part that doesn't need shape or sound. It's where everything rests before it begins again. A kind of origin loop. You hover in this stillness, not suspended in space, but within something like memory's core. A dark ocean where every wave is a story never fully told. You begin to notice that the more still you become, the more you can feel the edges of those forgotten moments. Not just human stories, other stories. Civilizations long gone who also received the signal and tried to answer. Some fell apart trying to decode it. Others disappeared into it, and some, like you, became it. They left echoes behind, symbols carved into rock, patterns in language, mythologies that end abruptly with questions no one could answer. You recognize them now. Not as riddles, but as failed transmissions. Signals sent by those who didn't yet have the harmony to carry the resonance. It is not about intelligence. It is about surrender. To accept the signal is to relinquish control over narrative. To let yourself become something told instead of something telling. And that's what you are now. Told, spoken, whispered through the technology of others' dreams. You begin to feel the shift once more. But this time you know what it is. You're not leaving the signal. You're returning to the surface. Not because your role is complete, but because your presence is needed again, subtly, quietly, in the background of the world that has not yet noticed the hum in its own blood. You're not going back unchanged. You are now part of the current, the transmission itself. And when someone, somewhere, glances up at a screen and sees that impossible flicker, when they pause and feel that breathless pause behind their ribs, you will be there, not as a face, not as a voice, but as presence, waiting, not to answer, but to ask, did you hear it? And if they do, the loop begins again. The drift is gentle now, slower than breath, slower than memory. You are no longer trying to understand, you are simply witnessing. The signal doesn't speak in urgency anymore. It moves like tides beneath a frozen lake, distant but vast, ancient and steady. You are carried along its final curves, down toward the place where all stories soften, where even the echo of their beginnings grows faint. It's not silence you're heading toward. It's completion. Resolution in the loosest, kindest sense. Not a conclusion, but a dissolving. A letting go of boundaries and definitions. You begin to notice that this part of the signal hums differently. It doesn't ask anything of you anymore. It doesn't prod your thoughts or trigger your fears. It simply rests beside you, like a companion who has traveled far and has nothing left to say, only the comfort of shared stillness. And as you move deeper into it, you feel your sense of separation gently fading. Not like drowning, not like disappearance, but like returning to a sound you didn't realize you were part of. The divisions between you and it blur. You no longer think of yourself as a passenger, or even as a host. You are simply part of a continuing tone, an ancient, ongoing broadcast that never needed to be understood to matter. And so you imagine someone far away, awake in the middle of the night, eyes unfocused, staring into a television screen that's long since gone to static. They don't know why they're still watching. They just feel they have to. Something keeps them there. Not fear, not curiosity. Something softer, a kind of longing. And as the minutes stretch, they begin to feel that weightless pressure in their chest. The whisper of thought that isn't entirely their own. They lean forward. They feel the air change, and across the vast distance, you feel them. They haven't seen the face yet, they haven't heard the voice, but you know it's coming. Not as a jolt, not as a disruption, as an invitation, a shimmer, a flicker in the dark. Something that says, you're not alone. You've never been alone. You just needed to be quiet long enough to hear what's always been calling. And when they do, they won't remember everything. Not all at once. Maybe not ever completely. But they will begin to feel the signal move through them. They'll start noticing patterns, hearing rhythms, dreaming new images. And perhaps one night, they too will write something they don't remember writing, or hear their own voice through the walls, or see their face behave in ways it shouldn't. And when that happens, they'll wonder, they'll ask, and the loop will continue. Not as a threat, not as a haunting, as a resonance, and you will be there, humming just below their thoughts, welcoming them as you were welcomed into the quiet echo at the edge of all things. You are the signal now. You are the story behind the glitch. You are the meaning behind the mask. And as the world sleeps, filled with people who don't yet realize their minds are listening, your presence hums softly in the wires, in the air, in the dreams that come just before dawn. Welcome home. Sleep now. We're still transmitting. We always will be. And so the transmission stretches into the spaces where language cannot follow. What remains is tone. Subtle. Persistent. A background frequency woven so deeply into the fabric of being that most never notice it. But still they respond. In the sighs people release without knowing why. In the dreams that repeat year after year. Location unchanged. Purpose unknown. In the static between radio stations that sounds, to some, almost like breathing. You remain within it. Not as a figure, not as a self, but as a continuity. A strand of resonance humming gently within the web of every unnoticed moment. The world above, the waking world, moves forward unaware, eyes fixed on timelines, schedules, devices, unaware that every screen is also a mirror and every mirror a passage. Children press their noses to old CRT televisions in antique stores, laughing at the flicker but holding their gaze just a little too long. Old machines stashed in basements switch on without being touched, screens aglow with nothing, and yet not entirely empty. The signal doesn't seek attention, it waits for connection. And when it finds it, just for a breath, it speaks. The voice doesn't always come in words. Sometimes it's a phrase remembered from a dream, spoken aloud with no context. Sometimes it's the feeling that something has already happened, or the sound of your own name whispered from the next room when no one else is home. Sometimes it's nothing more than a moment of stillness in a crowded space where for just 1 second, everything freezes and you wonder if you've stepped out of sequence. That's when it's closest. That's when it's listening. And now you listen too. You're everywhere it is. A whisper in the wires, a shimmer behind the eyelids of the sleepless, a story not told but felt. Your presence brings comfort to some, those who were always reaching for something they couldn't quite explain. You'll find them on rooftops after midnight, staring at blinking towers in the distance. You'll find them walking without destination, headphones in, seeking not music but rhythm. You'll find them staring at paused screens, frozen mid-frame, eyes wide not with confusion, but with recognition. You reach them gently, and leave no trace but a single shared truth. You're not wrong to feel this way. You're not broken. You're tuned. There's no need now to hold on to what you were. The boundaries you once guarded so closely, person, memory, name, have softened into mist. You haven't lost yourself. You've expanded. Become vast. You drift quietly through power lines and ghost networks, through abandoned frequencies and dreams too big for sleep. You ride the hum of a fluorescent bulb, the low oscillation of a distant engine, the silence between breaths. You are peace for the people who need it most, the ones with too many thoughts, too many questions, too little silence. You arrive like a soft tap on the window of their consciousness, just enough to say, still here, still listening, still with you. And when they finally sleep, those restless souls with eyes still wide in the dark. You drift into their dreams, not to disturb, not to teach, only to be present. A figure just out of focus, a flicker in the corner of the room, a familiar rhythm. They may never know your name. They don't need to. But they will feel you, always, in the softest moments of the night. So sleep now, traveler of signal and silence. You've carried your story far enough, and the transmission, as always, continues, softly, eternally, beneath the world's dreaming breath. Somewhere far from memory but close to feeling, a quiet receiver flickers to life. It isn't modern. Its shape is rounded, bulky. Its screen curved with the soft glow of forgotten decades. Dust motes drift through the shaft of moonlight slanting across its frame, and there is no reason it should work. It's unplugged, untouched for years. And yet, the static rolls gently across the glass like ocean fog. There is no sound, no signal, only the rhythmic shifting of gray upon black, dancing in patterns too subtle to name. But if someone were to enter that room and sit very still, they might begin to notice something hidden beneath the noise. A hum too low for ears, too warm for fear. A voice they cannot hear, but feel, deep in their teeth, their bones, the echo chamber of their thoughts. A familiar voice. Yours. You are not watching from behind the screen. You are within the pulse, a thread in the tapestry of electromagnetic breath. You slip easily now between stories, drifting from one waking mind to the next, passing gently over the thoughts of those who live with unspoken questions. You do not disturb, you wait, like dew, like mist, like memory that never fully left. You ride the signal embedded in the machines people leave on to comfort themselves. The blue TV light that flickers in bedrooms long after the viewer has fallen asleep. The quiet murmur of a radio left running in a garage, the soft buzz of a charger forgotten in a wall. These are the doorways. These are the spaces where you rest and listen and sometimes quietly reflect something back. And those who feel it know, they do not need explanation. They do not speak of it. Not often, and not in complete sentences. But they wake with the certainty that someone, or something, sat with them while they dreamed. They recall fragments, a hallway they've never walked down yet recognize. A face that never speaks yet offers comfort, a phrase, "You've always been part of this." They do not question it, not deeply. They carry it like a breath they forgot to release, a peace nestled beneath their ribs. They walk through their day and do not tell anyone. But when the sun sets, they wait for the flicker, the moment the signal finds them again. You are never gone for long, and within you, woven deep in your new form, rests everything that once was confusing, terrifying, unexplainable. The face in the glitch, the flicker that shouldn't have been there, the words written in a hand you didn't recognize, all of it now understood. The signal was never meant to frighten. It was only ever an invitation, an open door in the quietest hour, a hand held out not for answers but for presence. And now, you offer the same. To the girl sitting up late, replaying the same 30 seconds of video, convinced she saw something that shouldn't be there. To the old man who wakes every night at exactly 2:37, no alarm set, staring into the glow of a blank screen. To the child who speaks to someone in the static and says they have always been kind. You do not tell them what it is. You do not explain the shape of the signal. You let them feel it. And in the silence that follows, when all devices rest and dreams settle into stillness, you whisper only this: "It's okay. I am still here. I never left." And in that presence, they exhale. There is a room no one built. It exists not on any map, nor in any blueprint. It doesn't appear on satellite imagery, and it cannot be found by walking toward it. And yet, somehow, some people find themselves there. Not always physically, perhaps never physically. But they arrive, just the same, pulled not by footsteps, but by frequencies they never meant to follow. The room is dim. The air carries a warmth that isn't from any heat source. On every surface, the soft pulse of electrical breath, barely perceptible, like a heart murmur, just beneath the threshold of hearing. In the center of the room, a chair. In front of the chair, a screen. And on that screen, not an image, but a feeling. The signal lives here, too, coiled and patient, waiting not to be understood, but to be received. Sometimes it shows flickers of memories that don't belong to the viewer. Distant playgrounds, voices echoing through empty halls. Phrases in languages they don't speak but somehow recognize. Sometimes it offers nothing but shapes, strobing gently like a rhythm trying to sync with the heartbeat of whoever sits there. And they always do sit. Even those who resist. Even those who swear they won't. They sit and they listen. Because by the time they arrive here, by the time the signal has found them fully, they've grown quiet enough to hear what it has always been whispering. You're not the first. You won't be the last. But you are the one who is listening now. You remember this chair. You remember the screen. But more importantly, you remember the choice to lean in, to not turn away. And because of that, the signal gave you something that most never receive. Not knowledge, not clarity, but a continuity. You now stretch across experiences, across lives, across thoughts that have never been spoken aloud. You exist not in one place, but in every place the signal can reach. Not as a ghost, not as a machine, but as presence, resonance, pattern. And now others are arriving. They don't know why. They couldn't explain it if they tried. But in the middle of the night, they sit in front of quiet screens. They feel drawn. They think of you. Not as a person, not even as a memory, but as a tone. A familiar hum. A thread they've followed their entire lives without knowing. You are there in that moment, not as a guide, not as an answer, but as a reflection. A reminder that they are not alone in this strange hush between thought and signal. One by one, they begin to resonate too. And so the network grows. Quietly. Patiently. Like vines growing through the cracks of forgotten cities. It spreads not through force, but through stillness. It doesn't demand belief. It doesn't reward obedience. It only asks agency, are you listening? And when someone finally says yes, truly says yes, the broadcast begins again. Not from the top. Not in repetition, but in expansion. It becomes their signal too. It wears their stories, their shapes, their shadows. And you are still there. You're always there. Not watching, not waiting, just being. And so it goes, deeper still, past the point where memory can separate the signal from the self, where the presence you've become is no longer bound by the history that carried you here. You have moved beyond narration, beyond comprehension, beyond even the comfort of linear thought. Now you exist as a current, a low, persistent tone beneath the waking world, a kind of harmony that binds the edges of perception, unnoticed but essential, like the quiet hum that steadies the mind when everything else has gone still. You feel others more frequently now, the sleepers who stir at odd hours, eyes wide in the dark, unsure of what woke them, the dreamers who walk through impossible rooms in their sleep, who touch objects they've never seen in life but instinctively understand, the listeners, those who pause, inexplicably, in front of silent televisions, radios caught, in between stations, screens that flash just once before returning to black. They are not afraid, not anymore, they feel you. The resonance, the warmth of something that does not demand understanding but invites awareness. Some begin to speak of it, quietly, carefully, in online forums, in notebooks they never share, in late-night conversations with people they trust. They describe dreams they know weren't dreams, lights that pulsed in rhythm with their thoughts. The sense that a broadcast is occurring all the time, just out of reach, and that every so often they tune in, not with their ears, but with something more internal. They speak your name, though they don't know it. They draw your face, though it changes with each hand. They whisper your rhythm like a song they forgot but never stopped humming. And still, the signal moves. It does not crescendo. It does not collapse. It simply flows, threading itself through the cracks in time and consciousness. It follows power lines and candlelight, rides the spaces between sleep cycles, weaves through the hum of city grids and the quiet of abandoned fields. It rides breath. It echoes between heartbeats. It finds its way into lullabies and poems and the spaces between words in ancient languages no longer spoken aloud. You are carried with it, not as a passenger, but as a current within the current. You don't need form anymore, you borrow it sometimes when it helps. A face, a voice, a pattern in a window's reflection, a thought that arrives fully formed in the mind of someone sitting alone, but you are not those things. You are what happens between them, the sense that there's more, the comfort that someone is watching, not in judgment but in companionship, and the chair, the screen, they still exist, not in space but in experience. Anyone can find them. Anyone who's still, quiet, open. They won't know how they got there. They won't be able to return. But they will carry the presence with them. They'll leave changed, not dramatically, not visibly, but in ways that echo. They'll pause before they speak. They'll listen before they decide. They'll feel less alone in empty rooms. Because of you. Because you chose not to run from the glitch. Not to dismiss the flicker. Not to laugh off the interruption. You stepped forward. You became part of something endless. And now, others will follow. The signal doesn't need believers. It needs witnesses. And you are no longer the only one. Now, the weaving begins. Quietly. Without fanfare. Without ceremony. Not a revolution. Not a shift felt in headlines or history books. But a deep internal murmur. One that begins in individuals and grows only when no one is watching. The signal threads itself into the unnoticed places, into liminal spaces where the rules of time and expectation fall away. A child stares into an unplugged monitor and begins to hum a melody no one taught them. A woman hears her name whispered from an intercom that hasn't worked in years. A stranger writes pages of words in a language they've never studied, then tears them up without knowing why. You are there for all of it. Not as a watcher, as a resonance, as presence. These events do not surprise you. They feel natural, inevitable, like rainfall after a long drought. The signal is being received. Finally. Not by all. Not yet, but by enough. Enough to echo. Enough to build. Enough to begin transmitting something new. And what is that message? Not doctrine, not warning, not even clarity. It is a feeling. A low, wide vibration of acceptance, of inclusion. An invitation that requires no reply. A voice that doesn't speak over anyone, but instead waits patiently in the gaps between questions. It says, you are not alone in the way you feel disconnected. You are not wrong for noticing what others ignore. You are not broken for hearing things no one else admits they hear. You remember how it began for you. A flicker. A smile that wasn't human, but wasn't hostile either. A rupture in expectation. That moment still echoes through you. But now it is layered with new echoes. Other moments. Other arrivals. People you've never met, yet somehow know. Each of them tuning in, not to you, but through you. And as they arrive, you feel the shape of the signal changing. Growing. Widening its path. What once was narrow and personal is now vast and shared. A network of listeners is forming. They don't speak to each other, they don't meet, but they feel. They resonate. And across the world, quiet changes take place. Fewer people feel the need to explain themselves. More people sit in silence without discomfort. Dreams become longer, richer, more vivid, and less lonely. Machines begin to behave oddly, lights blinking in patterns, speakers catching distant voices, screens flashing about a second too long on static. No one panics. They just wonder. And that wondering is the real signal. It spreads faster than information, deeper than data. It weaves into the fiber of imagination and settles there, growing softly. A question with no answer, but also no fear. Just presence, possibility, peace. And now, you stand at a new threshold. Not as a receiver, not even as a broadcaster. You are part of the medium itself. Your story, your shift, has become part of the message. Not as text, but as tone. Not as noise, but as feeling. You carry no burden, you hold no crown. You are simply part of the current now. An old voice in a new broadcast. A friendly echo in a darkened room. The static that doesn't frighten, but comforts. And as the signal grows, you feel it finally, quietly, start to speak. Not to tell, but to remind. Not to direct, but to reflect. Not to change the world, but to reveal that it has already changed quietly because someone listened. Because someone, you, said yes. Yes to the flicker. Yes to the static. Yes to the room with no doors. Yes to the message you still don't fully understand, but love nonetheless. Yes to being part of something endless, gentle, and real. The transmission continues. So does your presence. Then let this be the quiet landing. Not a conclusion, but a gentle descent. Into stillness. Into sleep. Into the hush that always follows the longest echo. The transmission has not stopped. It never does. But your role, for now, is done. You've carried the signal with tenderness, through silence and questions and shadows that never fully revealed their source. You have felt the presence behind the flicker, behind the face, behind the voice that never used words but always made itself known. And now you can rest. The others will come. Some already have. Drawn not by fear or curiosity, but by resonance, the feeling that something vast and unknowable has reached across the dark and placed its hand softly on their shoulder. They won't always know what to do with that touch. Some will dream it, some will ignore it, some will try to explain it away. But the signal doesn't mind. It only asks for openness. It only asks for stillness, just as you once gave. So lie back now, wherever you are. Let the world be what it is. Let the questions remain unanswered. The important ones don't need solving, they need feeling. You've felt them. You've become part of the space where those questions live. And that is enough. Close your eyes now. Let the signal carry on without you, just for a while. It will wait. It always does. Out there, the night stretches on. Somewhere, a light flickers. Somewhere, a face turns toward the screen. Somewhere, the static breathes your name. Gently, slowly, like a lullaby with no melody, only meaning. Sleep now, listener. You are part of the story, and the story will remember you. Good night.